They built a war game to humiliate humanity in front of the entire galaxy. They fixed the maps. They tampered with the food. They bought the judges. They made sure every route led to failure. What they did not understand was simple. Humans do not need fair rules to win. Give us a broken field, a hungry army, and an enemy certain of his own superiority, and we stop playing the game they wrote. We write a new one. The year was 20339 by Earth's old calendar, though few beyond the Sol Compact used it anymore. The place was Kharon Proving Moon, a scarred gray satellite circling the gas giant Veyr at the edge of imperial space. For 300 years, Kharon had hosted the Ascendancy Trials, ceremonial war games staged by the Veyr Empire to display order, discipline, and imperial right to rule. No one mistook them for sport. The Galactic Council watched. Trade blocks watched. Neutral systems watched. Every rising species watched. The message was always the same. The Veyr Empire was civilization. Everyone else was either useful, obedient, or temporary. This year, for the first time, humanity had been invited to compete. Commander Elias Vance stood in the docking bay of the human carrier Resolute Dawn and watched Kharon rotate beneath the viewport glass. The moon's surface looked like old bone. Dry ridges, black impact seas, razor canyons, thin atmosphere, long nights, violent dust fronts. It was a place built to punish mistakes. A junior signals officer came up beside him, boots ringing softly on the steel deck. "Sir," she said, handing him a slate. "Final inventory pass. You need to see this." Vance took it without looking at her. He already knew the expression on her face. Tight jaw. Controlled anger. The kind soldiers learned when outrage had to wait its turn. He read in silence. Then once more. Then he exhaled through his nose. "How much is missing?" "Enough to kill us slowly," the officer said. "Field kits cut by 30%. Long-range comm repeaters replaced with obsolete civilian models. Half our atmospheric filters are wrong spec for Kharon dust. 4 pallets of ration protein are spoiled." "Accident?" She gave him a flat look. "No, sir." He nodded. "Name?" "Lieutenant Mara Chen." Vance finally looked at her, mid-30s, sharp eyes, clean posture. A logistics officer who took inventory personally, which meant she was either obsessive or competent. He preferred both. "You've reported this up the chain?" "Yes, sir." Imperial inspectors signed every crate before transfer. Their answer is that all participating forces accepted standardized allotments. "Standardized," Vance repeated. "Yes, sir." He handed the slate back. "Keep digging." Quietly. "I want every serial mismatch, every seal breach, every substitution documented." Chen hesitated. "Sir, if this goes public before the exercise begins, they'll say we're making excuses." "That's because we're expected to lose with gratitude." Vance looked back at Kharon. "So we won't complain, not yet." Mara Chen gave a small nod. "Understood." When she walked away, Vance remained at the glass. His reflection looked older than 52. Harder too. There was gray in his beard now, and the healed burn line along his neck showed pale against his skin. He had commanded through the Callista riots, through the siege of New Carthage, through the famine escort campaigns in the Perseus corridor. He had kept soldiers alive on half rations and broken engines. He had buried friends whose names still arrived in dreams. He was not afraid of losing face in front of the galaxy. He was afraid of losing his people for someone else's theater. That was his wound, though he never named it aloud. 12 years earlier on the colony world Ardent, he had obeyed a diplomatic delay order while waiting for legal clearance to move civilians through a contested zone. The clearance came 6 hours late. Since then, Elias Vance had believed in many things less than he once had. Ceremony, promises, civilized restraint. But he still believed in duty. The opening assembly took place in the Hall of Standards, a massive chamber carved directly into Kharon's basalt crust. Banners hung from the vaulted ceiling. Veyr blue and gold dominated the room, interrupted only by the sigils of subordinate houses and allied polities. Human colors were there too, but placed at the edge of the semicircle, near the secondary entrances, where protocol could pretend inclusion while practicing contempt. Delegations filled the stepped galleries above, avian seraph dignitaries with glassy black eyes. thick-shelled drill merchants murmuring into translator beads, pale, long-limbed Ethari senators seated in perfect stillness, and everywhere, Veyr officers in polished segmented armor, their silver facial markings catching the light. At the center dais stood High Marshal Kelt Vorun, commander of the Imperial Trial Legions and architect of this year's games. He was tall even for a Veyr, his crest crown plated in ceremonial metal, his expression carved from the same stone as the chamber. When he spoke, his translator rendered his voice as deep and musical, touched with cold amusement. Representatives of the Council, honored commanders, witnesses of history, we gather for the Ascendancy Trials, where discipline is tested, doctrine is refined, and the worthiness of military cultures is displayed before civilization. His gaze drifted to the human delegation, just drifted. A small insult, well practiced. The newest participants, he said, join us from a world famous for turbulence, adaptation, and regrettable enthusiasm. A ripple of laughter moved through the galleries. Vance did not react. Vorun continued. This year's trial will simulate frontier stabilization under asymmetric pressure. 4 commands, 1 contested theater, limited resources, dynamic civilian variables, strategic objectives judged by territorial control, force preservation, command coherence, and legal compliance under Council convention. Legal compliance. That drew a quiet breath from Vance. Ceremonial words. Clean words. The kind that could be used to disguise a knife. The commanders were called forward one by one. Tribune Sarek of House Taller, representing the Veyr First Cohort. Matriarch Strategos Ilya Wren of the Seraph Combine. Expeditionary Wing. Prefect Dalmar of the Drell Protectorates. And finally, Commander Elias Vance of the Soul Compact Defense Fleet. When Vance stepped onto the central floor, the cameras followed. He could feel the room taking his measure. The human, the Death Worlder. The outsider who had survived enough real war to recognize a stage 1. Commander Vance, he said, Marshal Vorun, a distinguished service record. So I'm told, a faint pause. Tiny. Dangerous. Vorun's eyes narrowed by less than a degree. I trust your forces are prepared for the demands of Kharon. We'll manage. Excellent. It would be unfortunate if your people found our standards strenuous. Vance held his gas. We brought our own standards, he said. For the first time, the galleries fell fully silent. Then Vorun smiled. Not warmly, not even truthfully. But he smiled. The game began at dawn local time. The scenario assigned each command a sector on Kharon's northern continent, centered around a scattered network of abandoned mining settlements, water extraction towers, and relay stations. The objective was to secure population centers, represented by autonomous drone colonies, establish logistical corridors, and repel escalating hostile incursions generated by the simulation network. In reality, the hostile incursions were not fully simulated. Remote-controlled armor, live-fire drones, and electronic warfare units made sure command errors still had blood in them. Each force was dropped with limited supplies and incomplete intel. Only the human force received false terrain overlays. It took Lieutenant Jonah Price 23 minutes to prove it. Price was Vance's reconnaissance chief. Young for the role, 29, with a narrow face and a habit of speaking too fast when he was angry. He had grown up in the dust belts of Mars and treated terrain the way musicians treated rhythm. He felt when something was wrong before he could explain it. He burst into the command shelter just after first landing, helmet tucked under one arm, dust streaking his uniform. The maps are poisoned, he said. Vance looked up from the tactical table. Define poisoned. The ridgeline west of Droxonsi doesn't exist. It's a sink field. We lost 2 crawlers trying to flank through it, and the transit gorge market here. He stabbed at the display, blocked by glassfall and collapsed shelves, no way through. Mara Chen, already at the logistics station, turned sharply. That route is our waterline. It was our waterline, Price said. Now it's a graveyard. Vance stepped closer to the table. The holographic topography shimmered in blue light above them. The official route still showed green. Any chance the terrain shifted? Price barked a humorless laugh. Not in the last 1,000 years. Outside, alarms whooped twice. Then came the stutter of point defense cannons engaging incoming drones. Vance touched his comm bead. Status. Captain Amira Solis answered through static. Enemy probes from the South Ridge, testing perimeter, light armor signatures. They know exactly where we are. Of course they did. The human command post had been placed in a bowl-shaped depression with limited high ground control, 3 exposed approaches, and a dust pattern that blinded optics every afternoon. Vance switched channels. All units condition amber. Assume compromised intel. No movement based solely on imperial mapping. Confirm every route by drone, visual, or boot. 5 days at normal issue. 8 if we cut immediately. Water is worse if the western line is dead. Medical? Enough for 1 dead engagement, maybe 2. Price said, "Sir, we should file protest." No. He stared at the false ridge lines for 1 long second. Then his voice flattened into command. "We document everything. We say nothing. Not until we can prove intent in a way the whole council can see." Captain Solis entered the shelter with dust on her cheek and rifle still slung across her chest. She was broad-shouldered, calm under pressure, one of those infantry officers who made panic feel embarrassed to exist in her presence. "South probes pulled back," she said. "Too neat. Too quick." "Because they were never scouting," Vance said. "They were measuring our response time." Price muttered. "This whole exercise is a loaded deck." Vance looked around at his officers. Chen with her clipped anger. Price with his restless eyes. Solis with the patience of a blade in a sheath. Good people. Capable people. People the Empire had mistaken for props. He tapped the table and dismissed the hologram. "Then stop treating this like a game," he said. "From this point forward, we run it as a hostile campaign. Chen, cannibalize anything non-essential. I want actual inventory, not declared inventory. Price, launch manual, reckon webs and terrain verification teams. Solis, redesign perimeter as if we're expecting a night assault, because we are." He let the silence settle. They wanted us blind, hungry, embarrassed. Fine. We fought in worse places for worse reasons. We hold what matters. We deny them easy footage. And we make every dirty trick expensive. The first 3 days were ugly. That mattered. Because victory, later, would mean nothing if the cost early on did not feel real. The false maps led 1 engineering squad into a razor fissure, where 2 men died before the rescue lines reached them. Kharon dust chewed through the substitute atmospheric filters and left soldiers coughing blood-flecked grit by evening. Wise supply drones carrying their already reduced rations were rerouted by spoofed transponder signals and recovered only after dangerous retrieval missions. In the official broadcast, these setbacks were framed as examples of human inexperience. In a human camp, they were entered into evidence. Vance visited the casualties himself. He always had. At Field Station Red, a medic was sealing the leg stump of Corporal Benitez while the man gritted his teeth so hard blood ran from 1 cracked gum. "You're staring, sir," Benitez said through the pain. Vance stepped closer. "You still owe Sergeant Hall 20 credits. Hard to collect from a dead man." Benitez gave a weak laugh. "Then I'll stay alive out of pure financial spite." "Good. That's a reliable motive." When Vance turned to leave, the medic caught his sleeve. "Commander," she said quietly, "these filter failures aren't random. The ceramic weave is industrial grade, fine for dock labor, not for Kharon exposure." "I know. We keep rotating masks and pushing saline flushes, but if the dust storms worsen..." She did not finish. She did not need to. Vance walked out into a twilight painted brown by airborne grit. Above him, distant camera drones hung like patient insects. He looked at them for a long moment. Then he called Mara Chen. "Tell me there's one piece of good news." "There might be," she said. "I found the replacement manifests for our missing mech kits. They were rerouted to the Veyr first cohort quartermaster by administrative error. Not yet. But I can prove the routing signature was altered after departure from the transfer docks." Vance's voice lowered. "Keep everything redundant. Off-network copies. Hard storage." Then Chen said, "Sir, if we expose this too early, they bury it. If we wait too long, we may not have a force left to vindicate." "I know." That night, he sat alone in the command shelter, lights dimmed, listening to windrake grit across the outer plating. On the table before him lay an old photograph sealed inside clear polymer. Lena, laughing into sunlight, her hair blown sideways by a storm off the Arden coast. He carried it into every campaign and almost never looked at it. Tonight he did. "I know what this is," he said softly to the empty room. "I know the trap." The dead, as usual, gave no advice. At Zucentrintus and to Locale, the second trap closed. Long-range sensors detected a civilian convoy moving towards settlement node Orpheus, one of the autonomous drone colonies designated as protected non-combatants in the exercise. If the humans failed to intercept a hostile incursion there, they would lose massive legal compliance points. If they moved too aggressively, they risked violating the same convention. A perfect dilemma. Price flagged inconsistencies immediately. "The convoy signature is too clean. And why are they moving in a dust front? Nobody sane does that." Solis said, "Because they want someone else to be sane for them." Vance studied the feed. Blurry heat ghosts trudging through static. Civilian transponder codes. Escort units too far back. Enemy armor approaching from the east. "Marshal Voron is counting on urgency," Vance said. Chen folded her arms. "If we ignore it and it's real, they paint us as butchers. If we charge in and it's a trap, they good us." Vance looked at the timer, then made the choice. "Deploy rescue package, but not the one they expect. Solis, take 2 fast squads, on high arc, through the basalt shelves. No armor, no obvious response." Solis nodded once. "And if the convoy is fake, then we rescue nobody and kill whoever tries to spring it." The operation unfolded in the dark like a held breath. From the command shelter, Vance watched ghostly icons move across the tactical display, while Kharon's dust turned every camera image into a dirty smear. The decoy column worked. Enemy drones broke from the east and dove on the false convoy of human heat signatures moving through the open flats. Moments later, hidden artillery emplacements activated from beneath tarp-head rock faces, saturating the area with training explosives calibrated to disable vehicles and shred infantry armor. If Solis had taken the direct route, half her people would have died. Instead, her voice came over comms, calm and low. "We have visual on hostile batteries. Confirmed Veyr pattern control architecture beneath simulation masking." Price swore. "They embedded live artillery inside the exercise scenario," Vance said. "Can you neutralize?" Solis answered, "Already doing it." The next 90 seconds became required viewing across 17 star systems. Human infantry dropped from the shelf lines on rappel cables through a dust veil the Veyr gunners had assumed impassable. Charges slapped onto turret housings. Suppressed rifle fire cut drone controllers from their stations before alarms could propagate. One squad pivoted straight through the battery line and reached the supposed civilian convoy. It was empty. No civilians, no drivers. Just decoy shells projecting false transponder codes from armored crates. Solis opened one with a breaching torch while her helmet cam streamed to the official observers. Inside was a secondary prize. Cases of human-marked ration packs, medical kits, atmospheric filters, all stamped with transfer seals from the Resolute Dawn. Stolen supplies, repositioned as bait. In the command shelter, no one spoke for a full 2 seconds. Then Mara Chen whispered, "I have them." Vance's pulse slowed instead of quickening. He had learned long ago that anger made people rush, and rushing was how traps claimed their second victim. "Secure every crate," he said. "Full visual chain, serial capture, witness signatures from neutral observer drones if any are in range." Price was already working. 3 council drones are feeding public. They saw the whole thing. For the first time since landing, Elias Vance allowed himself to think not just about survival, but about reversal. The footage exploded through the galleries of the Galactic Council within the hour. Official commentators tried to frame it as a clerical anomaly inside a fluid exercise. That explanation lasted until Solis, standing in Kharon dust with a Veyr artillery battery smoking behind her, held one recovered crate up to her helmet cam and read aloud the transfer code from the human departure manifest. The code matched Chen's archived records exactly. Publicly. Undeniably. Undeniably. The Empire's first answer was silence. Its second answer came from High Marshal Voron himself. He requested a direct command conference. The transmission filled the center display of the human shelter. Voron's face appeared in severe profile before turning toward Vance. Commander, he said, smooth as polished metal, an unfortunate irregularity has occurred. We propose a temporary suspension of judgment concerning recovered material until proper verification can be completed. No, Vance said. Voron's translator gave no hint of irritation, but his eyes did. You reject procedural review? I reject private procedural review, Vance said. Any verification happens on open council feed with neutral audit. The trials are governed by imperial charter. And observed under council legitimacy, Vance replied. You wanted an audience, keep it. Silence pressed at both ends of the channel. Then Voron said, You are close to overstepping, Commander. Vance leaned forward slightly. You stole my soldiers' kits and baited a civilian rescue trap with them. If this is your idea of ceremonial honor, overstepping is the least of your problems. The channel cut. Price let out a breath. That was the moment diplomacy did. No, Vance said, diplomacy did when they decided our dead would be part of the pageantry. The next day, the judges revised the scoring rubric. That was how desperation looked in bureaucratic clothing. Supply recovery, they announced, had minimal relevance to territorial success. Public evidence did not supersede charter authority. Strategic point weighting would now emphasize offensive initiative and deep objective capture. In simpler terms, they had changed the rules mid-game, because humanity had started winning the version visible to everyone else. Price threw the bulletin onto the table. Unbelievable. Chen shook her head. No, believable. Just stupid enough to be public. Captain Solis read the amended scoring criteria, then looked at Vance. They want us to lunge. Yes. Solis allowed herself the faintest smile. That does sound human. Vance tapped the central map, this time built from their own reconnaissance, hand-corrected and ugly with pencil notations. Then we used that expectation. This was the true turn of the campaign. Up to that point, the humans had been fighting to survive sabotage. Now they began fighting to expose the system that required sabotage to beat them, and for that, they needed something more than endurance. They needed theater of their own. Kharon's northern continent was arranged around three major scoring hubs. Orpheus in the west, damaged but now politically radioactive. Halcyon Basin in the center, where multiple factions contested an old water extraction lattice. And Crown Spire in the east, a communication citadel built into a needle of black stone that overlooked the entire simulation theater. Crown Spire was considered unreachable without heavy armor. The false maps had encouraged the humans to believe that the northern ice trenches blocked approach on foot. Price's updated surveys told another story. The trenches were passable, but only in narrow windows when thermal venting reduced the surface glass and exposed old maintenance tunnels beneath the frost crust. The tunnels were ancient, unstable, unmonitored because no sane commander would move an army through them. Vance stared at the scans, then at his officers. Who wants to do something regrettable? Price grinned first. Solis second. Chen just asked, How many people? Not an army, Vance said. A rumor. They would let the Veyr believe humanity was making a desperate push into Halcyon Basin with its remaining mobile assets. Fake signal traffic, visible convoy movement, manufactured disputes on open channels, a believable overcommitment by a command under pressure. Meanwhile, a small force would vanish into the ice trenches, move through the maintenance tunnels under radio blackout, and seize Crown Spire from the inside. Not hold it forever. Just long enough. Long enough to hijack the official observer network. Long enough to publish every documented tampering record, rerouted supply manifest, and altered scoring directive into the live feeds of the council and every watching system. Price spread the tunnel schematics on the table. These maintenance shafts are from pre-imperial mining eras. No current security integration. But sections are collapsed, and the vent pockets spike over boiling. Chen said, I can build portable condenser rigs from stripped coolant loops. They'll buy breathability in the hottest segments. Barely, Solis said. And once we surface? Price answered for her. Spire garrison is ceremonial on paper, elite in practice. House taller watchers, imperial adjudicators, electronic warfare team. Vance nodded. Which is why I'm going too. Three heads turned toward him at once. No, Chen said immediately. Solis was slower but firmer. Sir, with respect, absolutely not. Price rubbed a hand through his hair. If this goes wrong, we lose command coherence and hand them the story they want. Vance listened. Then he said, if this works, the deciding moment of the exercise becomes a command stand in front of every witness in the council. They will challenge legitimacy, chain of custody, and context. They will say your data was forged by subordinates acting beyond scope. They will not say that to me. Chen's jaw tightened. So this is about optics. This is about burden, Vance said. I will not ask a lieutenant or a captain to carry the political blast of this alone. Solis studied him for a second too long. She knew him well enough to hear the hidden truth. He was also choosing the most dangerous position because dangerous positions made sense to a man who still carried Arden in his chest like shrapnel. But she did not call him on it in front of the others. Instead, she said, then I'm leading the assault element. Granted. Granted, Chen exhaled. Then I stay here and run the lie. You run the lie, Vance agreed. The halcyon deception began at dawn. Human vehicles moved loudly across exposed flats. Engineers erected temporary relay poles in full view of enemy drones. 2 open-channel arguments were staged between logistics and field command, carefully crafted to imply fuel shortages, timing disputes, and a commander under pressure to score points fast. The Veyr took the bait exactly as predicted. Tribune Sarek redeployed his reserve armor toward Halcyon. Sareth observers shifted to capture what they expected would be a reckless human collapse. Imperial commentators sharpened their language, already preparing to narrate a lesson in overextension. Below the ice, 63 humans crawled through the dark. The maintenance tunnel ceiling was so low in places that armored troops had to drag their packs sideways. Meltwater dripped from pipes older than the Empire itself. The air changed every 100 meters. Freezing in one chamber, scalding in the next. More than once, soldiers had to edge along ledges above steam vents that could strip skin from bone. Vance moved in the middle of the column, breathing through a reworked filter. Chen's team had doped from scavenged parts. His knees ached. His neck scar prickled in the heat. Every now and then he heard someone cough, curse softly, then keep moving. No one complained in earnest. These were human soldiers. You could starve them, freeze them, cheat them, and still they would save their energy for the enemy. Price slid back through the column until he reached Vance and Solis. His face glistened with sweat despite the cold zone they had just left. Problem, he whispered. Solis's hand went to her rifle. Security? Not exactly. Tunnel collapse ahead. Bigger than scans suggested. We can maybe climb through the upper fracture, but it narrows to 30 centimeters in one segment. Vance said, gear. Some will have to be abandoned. Solis looked down the line of soldiers behind them. How much? Price held his gaze. Enough that, if we hit hard resistance at the spire, exfiltration gets ugly. Vance was quiet a moment. Then he made another choice. Stripped to assault essentials. Breaching charges, rifles, comm burst kits, evidence cores. Everything else cached and marked. One of the sergeants down the line said, Sir, that includes reserve foam. Vance answered without raising his voice. Then nobody gets hit. Comfort stripped away ounce by ounce until only purpose remained. The crawl through the fracture took 41 minutes. At the narrowest point, Vance had to exhale fully and turn his head sideways to pass. Basalt scraped his armor. Dust filled his mouth. For one brief, choking second, the rock pressed against his chest so tightly that memory took him somewhere else. Voices he could not reach in time. His breath hitched. He stopped moving. Behind him, someone whispered, Sir? Vance shut his eyes. Not here, not now. He pushed forward and dropped into the next chamber hard enough to bruise his shoulder. Solis landed beside him moments later and looked at him once. Just once. They surfaced beneath Crown Spire during local dusk. The access shaft opened into an abandoned service vault beneath the communications citadel. Overhead, they could hear the hum of active systems and the distant footfall of guards crossing metal grates. Bryce plugged a fiber camera through a seam in the ceiling panel and squinted at the feed. 2 sentries on the lower ring, 1 adjudicator station, security door to main relay spine. Looks light. Solis murmured, which means the real resistance is higher. Vance checked the synchronized countdown on his wrist display. At that same moment, Above ground at Halcyon Basin, Mara Chen triggered Phase 2 of the deception. Then a deliberate relay blackout that made it seem the human offensive was collapsing under Veyr pressure. Imperial reserves surged forward to finish the humiliation. They left Crown Spire thinner than they should have. Solis moved first when the timer hit 0. The ceiling panel lifted. A stun charge rolled. White light burst through the vault above. Then humans came out of the floor. The first sentry never got a shot off. The second managed half a warning before Price slammed him into a console bank. Rifles snapped twice. A control room door blew inward. Alarm glyphs flashed red through the ring corridors. "Move," Solis said. They moved. Fast. Violent. Precise. The lower ring fell in 70 seconds. The upper ring fought harder. House Teller Adjudicator guards met them at the relay spine in lacquered ceremonial armor that turned out to be combat grade underneath. Plasma snapped through the corridor. One human corporal spun down with a hole through his shoulder. Another took shrapnel in the throat when a wall conduit exploded. Vance dropped beside the wounded corporal and dragged him behind a pillar. "Stay with me." The soldier was barely 20, named Avery. Freckles across his nose. Terrified and trying not to show it. "Sir," Avery gasped, clutching his ruined armor seam. This was supposed to be a game. Vance looked him dead in the eye. Price got the relay door open by overloading a ceremonial lockout that had never been designed to resist desperate engineers. Solis led the breach into the adjudication chamber. Inside were 6 officials, 3 techs, 2 armed guards, and 1 familiar face, High Marshal Kelt Vorun. For the first time, Ilias Vance truly understood the shape of the entire trap. Vorun had not been directing from afar. He had been inside Crown Spire, overseeing the observer feeds himself. That meant the war game was never just rigged. It was curated. Every angle. Every commentary line. Every delayed ruling. A performance controlled from the nerve center. Vorun stood unmoving while his guards raised weapons. "Commander Vance," he said, "you continue to confuse disorder with courage." Solis answered by shooting the left guard in the chest before he could fire. The chamber erupted. Humans hid cover. Adjudicator consoles shattered. 1 Imperial tech screamed and dove beneath a station. Price vaulted a railing to cut the room's external lock. Vance advanced through the chaos toward Vorun himself. The Marshal drew a sidearm with elegant speed. Not ceremonial after all. The first shots went wide as the floor bucked from a nearby blast. The second exchange was cleaner. Vorun's bolt grazed Vance's ribs and burned through armor. Vance's shot shattered the Marshal's shoulder plating and spun him against the central broadcast pillar. Silence followed in pieces. A falling cable, a hissing conduit, a wounded man trying not to groan. Solis's voice came from the far side of the room. "Chamber secure." Vorun, one arm hanging useless, straightened with painful dignity. Silver blood marked his ceremonial collar. Even wounded, he looked offended more than defeated. "This changes nothing," he said. Price laughed from the relay bank, wild with adrenaline. "That's usually how you know it changed everything." Mara Chen's voice burst through the emergency channel from half a continent away. "Elias, I have access. Repeat, I have partial access. Your side needs 30 more seconds to grant full observer stream authority." Vaughn stepped to the central console. Broken screens reflected his face in fractured shards. Vorun watched him with open hatred now. "You think the council wants truth," the Marshal said. "They want stability. They will take our explanation over your outrage." Vance entered Chen's authentication key. "Maybe," he said. "But first they're going to see it." The last lock fell. Across the Crown Spire displays, the official trials insignia vanished. In its place came raw file trees, manifests, camera archives, rerouting orders, scoring revisions, transponder spoofs, battery activation logs, and direct oversight authorizations linked to House Tower command channels. Not a speech, not an accusation. Evidence. Clean. Time-stamped. Cross-referenced. Impossible to smother before the galaxy had already copied it. The council feeds lit up. Observer drones rebroadcast automatically. Neutral networks mirrored the stream within seconds. Price stared at the cascade and said, almost reverently, "There you are." The midpoint of the story, the true revelation, was not that the Empire had cheated. Everyone had suspected that, at least in private. The revelation was that the rot was larger than one sadistic marshal or one ambitious house. The documents showed years of manipulated trials. Subordinate species quietly sabotaged when politics required their embarrassment. Scores adjusted to maintain imperial prestige. Observer edits made to remove footage of their mistakes. Even casualty reports minimized when foreign troops were hurt. The Ascendancy Trials were not an honorable tradition corrupted this year. They had always been a machine. And tonight, humanity had opened it in front of everyone. Voron saw the realization in Vance's eyes and smiled through blood. "Yes," he said softly. "Now you understand. This is governance." "No," Vance said. "This is decay wearing metals." The Empire answered with force. External blast doors around Crown Spire slammed shut. Signal jammers activated. Tribune Sarek pulled back from Halcyon too late. Redirected his armor columns east. A council injunction demanded immediate ceasefire pending review, but on Kharon the Veyr command ignored it for 9 critical minutes. 9 minutes was enough to decide whether the humans died as whistleblowers or survived as victors. Solus checked the outer sensor pane and swore, "They're closing every approach." "How long until they breach?" Vance asked. 8 minutes if cautious, 3 if they stop caring about the structure. Price was still flooding networks with mirrored data packets. "I can keep the feed alive another 4, maybe 5, before the jammers isolate us." Shen cut in again. "I've pushed copies to Sareth commercial arrays and 2 Drell-free channels. The data's out. But if they retake the Spire now, Imperial media will say you attacked the adjudicators to hide your own fabrication." Vance understood at once. Evidence alone was not enough. They needed the last image, the one history would remember. Not humans skulking in a control room. Humans holding the center openly while the Empire tried to silence them. He turned to Solus. "Can we hold the upper ring?" She checked ammo readouts. Counted living soldiers with one sweep of her eyes. Measured distance, door width, enemy approach, and acceptable death in less than a second. "Yes," she said. "For a little while. That's all we need." The defense of Crown Spire became the kind of battlemen remembered in old age with their hands still shaking. Humans overturned adjudication benches into barricades. They repurposed ceremonial holo-projectors as glare screens. Price rigged corridor lights to pulse in staggered frequencies that interfered with Veyr target optics. Chen, from her distant shelter, fed them maintenance schematics and pressure door overrides, as if she were fighting beside them. The first breach came through the eastern stair. House Tower shock troops charged in tight formation behind portable shields. Solis waited until they crossed the threshold marker she had painted with a wounded man's blood, because nothing else was handy. Then she triggered the floor panels. Price's earlier overload had weakened the mag lock anchors beneath the stair lip. 3 shield bearers dropped together when the deck section collapsed half a meter. The formation broke. Human rifles did the rest. The second breach hit from above through a service hatch. Close quarters, knives and sidearms. Too tight for clean lines of fire. Vance met one trooper hand-to-hand near the broadcast pillar. The Veyr soldier was younger, stronger in the shoulders, faster on the first strike. Vance took a blow to the jaw, let it happen, trapped the follow-up arm, and drove both of them into a live console. Sparks burst across their armor. The trooper convulsed. Vance finished it with his sidearm at point-blank range. Avery, the wounded corporal who should have been out of the fight, dragged himself to a barricade and kept reloading magazines for others, with one trembling hand. At one point, Price shouted, "Signal collapse in 60 seconds." Vance shouted back, "Then make the last 60 count." So Price opened every surviving chamber mic and every observer channel still linked, and instead of issuing a prepared statement, he let the galaxy hear the battle. Human medics calling for pressure sealant. Solus ordering sectors. Shen feeding coordinates from far away. Their commands overlapping in panicked imperial code. And above it all, Julius Vance, voice hoarse and calm. Galactic Council observers. This is Commander Elias Spence of the Sol Compact. Crown Spire is under assault by Imperial forces after release of authenticated trial records. We remain in control. Any further denial from Veyr authorities is now a lie made in real time. The message reached farther than any polished speech could have, because people believed blood before they believed ceremony. The third breach nearly ended them, Sarek's forward unit cut through the southern bulkhead with industrial torches and sent 2 micro-drones through first. Another lost an eye and kept shooting until he bled out against the relay bank. Solis was thrown sideways by a blast that cracked her chest plate. Vance crawled to her behind, smoking debris. "You alive?" she coughed. "Annoyingly." "Can you stand?" With complaints. He hauled her up. Across the chamber, Voron still sat restrained against the central pillar where they had bound him after the first firefight. Blood loss had paled his features, but his attention remained sharp, almost hungry. He was watching the room, watching the damage, watching humans spend themselves to hold evidence they could have transmitted and fled from. At last he said, not to Vance but to the room itself, "Why? The data is already released. Withdraw. Save your dead." Vance turned toward him while weapons thundered in the corridor. "Because if we run now," he said, "you tell the story afterward." Voron's expression changed then, only slightly, but enough. For the first time, he grasped what humanity was doing, not merely exposing corruption, seizing narrative ground, holding morale terrain the way armies held hills. It was a very human kind of warfare, messy, psychological, built on endurance and witness, and the Empire had no defense against it because the Empire believed appearances were reality. Kharon taught it otherwise. Outside, the Council's delayed ceasefire order finally arrived with teeth. Sarth commercial fleets threatened trade sanctions. Drell's observers demanded emergency censure. Sari legal monitors transmitted a provisional injunction naming Crown Spire a protected evidentiary site under interstellar review. That slowed Sarek. It did not stop him. So Vance made the decision the climax had been driving toward from the beginning. He could continue holding the chamber and likely lose half the survivors before outside pressure forced to stand down. Or he could end it himself by converting the wargame's symbolic heart into a public surrender point so clear that any further attack would become a live atrocity. He looked to Price. How much control of the main display masked? 30%. Enough for external projection? Price blinked. Then understood. Yes. Barely. Vance looked at Solis. "Can you buy 2 minutes?" She checked her rifle. There were 11 rounds left. "Yes." He nodded once. "Do it." Price rerouted the central broadcast mast away from internal feeds and toward the outer shell of Crown Spire. Every remaining lumen on the Black Needle flared to life at once. Against Kharon's darkening sky, the entire tower became a screen visible for kilometers. Across it, in letters 40 meters high, appeared the authenticated Council injunction, the Emergency Evidentiary Protection Order, and beneath both, a live image from inside the chamber. Humans bloodied but standing, Imperial assault fire striking the protected site. High Marshal Florin bound in view, timestamp, verification seals, public witnesses climbing by the second. Then Vance stepped in front of the central camera. He removed his helmet. Dust streaked his face. Blood marked one temple. His eyes looked tired enough to belong to an old man and hard enough to belong to war itself. "This is Commander Elias Vance," he said into the live feed. "The Soul Compact recognizes the Ascendancy Trials as suspended under Council review. Crown Spire is now an open evidentiary site. Any force advancing on this structure advances on law, witness, and truth in full public view." He paused as another impact shook the room. Then he delivered the line that would follow the Empire for decades. "You wanted humanity here as decoration. Instead, you invited us to audit your empire. Not because they feared the humans in the tower, because they feared every eye now fixed upon them." That was the moment Imperial prestige cracked. Not with an explosion, not with a fleet battle, with hesitation. Public, visible hesitation. The kind that tells every subordinate world the giant can bleed. Minutes later, Sareth Observercraft broke atmosphere and moved into Overwatch under Council emergency mandate. Drell legal envoys transmitted challenge codes directly to Veyr command frequencies. Imperial channels dissolved into contradiction. Stand down. Advance. Contain. Negotiate. Deny. Too many orders, too many witnesses, too late. Tribune Sarek withdrew his assault units 26 minutes after the display mast went live. When the bulkhead guns fell silent, no one in the chamber moved right away. Battle does that sometimes. It keeps roaring in the body after the room has gone still. Price sank against a ruined console and started laughing from exhaustion. Solus slid down the barricade beside two dead troopers and closed her eyes for exactly 5 seconds before forcing them open again. "Veyr," the wounded corporal whispered. "Did we win?" Vance looked around at the blood, the smoke, the shattered adjudication dice, the captured marshal, and the live feeds still pouring across the stars. Then he answered honestly, "We survived long enough for the truth to matter." For soldiers, that was sometimes the same thing. The resolution came slowly because systems do not collapse in one night, even when their masks do. Not out of morality at first, but because political organisms protect themselves when scandal grows expensive. Marshal Keldfarin was recalled in chains to face inquiry, though half the Empire called him a scapegoat and the other half called him unlucky. Before he was taken from Crown Spire, he asked to speak to Vance alone. The guards permitted 1 minute. Voron stood with medical restraints around his injured arm, silver blood cleaned from his collar, his posture restored as much as pain allowed. "You think this ends us?" he said. "No," Vance replied. "Empires are harder to kill than men." Voron studied him. "Then why do this?" Downs thought of Ardent, of the medkits stolen from his people, of Avery bleeding beside a console in what had been advertised as ceremony. "Because every machine built on humiliation eventually mistakes cruelty for strength," he said. "And once everyone sees that, its ending starts." Voron's gaze is sharpened. "You speak like a revolutionary. I speak like a logistics officer who learned where your empire keeps its weight." That earned the faintest, bitter ghost of respect. Then Voron was led away. The dead were counted next. That part mattered most. 7 human personnel killed. 23 seriously wounded. Dozens injured by dust exposure, shrapnel, burns, and structural collapse. Vance read every name himself before transmitting them home. He did not permit the word acceptable. He did not permit the phrase necessary losses. He had hated such language since Ardent. At the field memorial erected outside the human camp, Kharon's wind worried at black remembrance cloth while survivors stood in a rough semicircle under a pale gas giant sky. Chen placed recovered medkits at the base of the marker. Solus laid down the cracked chest plate she had worn at Crown Spire. Price, unable to trust his own voice, simply set a data chip containing the complete evidence archive beside the names of the fallen. When it was Vance's turn, he removed the old photo of Lena from his breast pocket. He looked at it once, then put it back, not because he was letting go, because grief had finally changed shape. For years he had carried Ardent as proof that delay, caution, and procedure could kill as surely as bombs. On Kharon he had nearly overcorrected into something else, something close to martyrdom. Solis saw it. Maybe Chen did too. He had walked into Crown Spire partly from duty, and partly because part of him no longer cared enough whether he came back. That changed when Avery asked if this was still a game. When medics spent the last foam on one more breath. When his officers refused to let him carry the whole burden alone. Survival, he remembered at last, was not cowardice. Living through the truth and making others face it was its own kind of courage. 3 weeks later, at the Emergency Council session on Neutral Station Meriden, the footage from Crown Spire played again before delegates who could no longer pretend distance from what they had seen. Humanity did not ask for revenge. That surprised many of them. The Saw Compact asked for audited reforms, neutral oversight in all interstellar military exercises, reparations for participating forces injured by manipulated scenarios, and criminal review of command tampering under Council law. Practical demands, enforceable demands. Enforceable demands. The sort that changed systems because they made corruption expensive. Mara Chen testified about supply diversions with crisp precision that reduced 3 imperial administrators to stumbling evasions. Yona Price demonstrated terrain falsification overlays and showed how they had been designed to steer human units into casualty zones. He looked too young to be that composed and too angry to be intimidated. Amira Solis was asked by one ethery senator whether humanity's aggressive seizure of Crown Spire had itself endangered legal norms. She answered without hesitation. When the people controlling the courtroom are burning the evidence and shooting the witnesses, entering the courtroom is not the breach. That line spread almost as far as Vance's. And Vance himself, when finally asked what humanity had proven on Kharon, gave the simplest answer of all. That we are done confusing pageantry with order. The council chamber remained silent after he said it, not because they were offended, because too many of them knew exactly which of their own traditions might not survive the same scrutiny. As for Midnight Galaxy's kind of ending, the one that matters to men who love stories of underestimated humanity, know this. The Empire did not fall the next day. That would be childish. Power rarely dies in one dramatic blast. Its subjects become observant. Its enemies become patient. After Kharon, Veyr invitations were examined instead of celebrated. Imperial rulings were archived by neutral channels before enforcement. Subordinate houses began leaking records of old accidents. Two protectorates delayed tribute negotiations. One client world refused a ceremonial military exchange outright. Prestige once punctured never seals perfectly again. And humanity? Humanity gained no throne from the affair. No instant crown, no empire. What it gained was more dangerous. A reputation, not merely for violence. The galaxy already knew humans could fight. Now it knew humans could endure sabotage, absorb humiliation, think under pressure, weaponize logistics, and turn the enemy's stage into a tribunal. That kind of species is difficult to bully. That kind is harder to predict, and hardest of all to control. Months later, aboard the Resolute Dawn on the long burn home, Vance stood once again at a viewport, watching stars drag into bright lines under transition thrust. "You look disappointed," she said. "I was told victory would feel cleaner." "That was your first mistake." He took the cup. "Only the first? By my count, no." He almost smiled. After a while she said, "You were ready not to come back from Crownspire. Direct as a rifle shot." That was Sully's. Val stared at the stars. "Yes. And now?" He considered before answering. "Now I think staying alive may irritate our enemies more." Sully's nodded. "Much better strategy." They drank in silence for a few seconds. Then Price's voice came over the corridor behind them, already agitated. "Commander, you need to see this. Someone leaked a House Teller internal memo and they are absolutely panicking." Chen's voice followed, drier. "Also, procurement finally approved replacement filters, so civilization may yet endure." Solis sighed into her coffee. There goes the silence. Boss turned from the viewport and followed their voices down the lit steel corridor toward his people, toward reports, toward consequences, toward the next problem. That was the human way too. Not the charge, not the roar, not the moment of defiance everyone remembered. The return to work after history noticed. On Kharon, the Empire rigged the war games because it believed the field belonged to it. The maps, the judges, the rules, the story. Humans survived by understanding something older than empires. Rules matter only as long as everyone believes the rulemaker can enforce them without being seen clearly. Once the mask slips, the contest changes. Then endurance becomes strategy. Logistics becomes rebellion. And simple refusal becomes power. They invited humanity to be humiliated. Instead, humanity taught the galaxy an expensive lesson. Never rig a contest against a species raised by unfair worlds, because when we realize the game is fixed, we stop trying to win it. We make sure everyone watches it break. If you want more stories of humanity turning the darkest stars against those who underestimate us, stay with Midnight Galaxy. There is always another frontier, and humanity is never finished.